Well, I'm Enigma Hood. Well, that would be what I call myself. And well, I'm gonna make another video, obviously. And unfortunately, it's about a topic that I thought I already addressed quite conclusively. I wanted to talk about this stereotype that black people are stupid. I already made a video about this. It was a greatest misconception. I think it was number 4. And it pretty, at least I thought, conclusively addressed the whole stereotype and dispelled it. But of course, all these racist idiots, they come out of the woodwork and they posit pseudoscientific findings and statements and, basically a lot of scientific racism, which is just pseudoscience, masquerading as real science, to back up their piss-poor arguments. Okay, look. First of all, there is no such thing as a black person. There's no such thing as a white person. Race is a social construct. Okay, I'm not really brown. I'm a human being. I'm a Homo sapiens. That's what I am. Race, if you take away a person's skin color, there's really little left of what you consider to be race. So if you were to bleach my skin, I look like a white guy. And you would have a very difficult time differentiating me from any other white guy. The whole idea of race being biological, that's bullshit. It's a social construct. You formulate it in your mind. It's formulated based on how we speak, our mannerisms, things that are things that are affected by environmental things. Okay, culture, language, religion, stuff like that. That's what it is. That's all it is. The other thing is, if we're going to talk about black people, what the hell is a black person? What does that mean? Somebody that comes from Africa? Egyptians come from Africa. Do you consider them to be black? That's not the same. There is greater... Okay, let's say you're talking about sub-Saharan Africa. That's usually what people think about when they're talking about black people. The thing is, at one point, we all originally came from Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. So it's like, what the fuck are you saying? How far back do you have to go in order to identify a black person? And did you know that there is greater genetic variability inside of sub-Saharan Africa than there is with the rest of the world combined? It's true. But let's address some of the racists' common arguments. And these are all pseudoscientific and nonsensical, but, just for the fuck of it, let's talk about some of them. Countries in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, they are primitive and technologically backwards. Look, Europe became powerful only recently, and they did so in a very short period of time. But believe it or not, most of the great devices, the weapons that they used, and the technology they have, they didn't invent them. It came from other countries. China invented numerous things, including guns. The Arabs and the Indians invented mathematics, arithmetic, our number system. This came from India and the Middle East. It did not come from Europe. Now, all these innovations, all these inventions, scientific progress and technology, this all happened in the old world. And the technology in the old world was transmitted throughout the old world. But it was not transmitted to isolated areas. And this includes the Americas, Australia, and sub-Saharan Africa. Now, Australia and the Americas are obvious examples of why they would be isolated. They're isolated because they're separated by enormous oceans. So it's very difficult for technology that was first invented in the old world to spread to these areas. But sub-Saharan Africa was isolated not because of a great ocean. It's still connected to North Africa, but it was separated by a gigantic desert. You can look up how big the Saharan Desert is. It's enormous. Back then they didn't have trains, they didn't have airplanes. Okay, crossing that desert was nearly impossible. So that's what isolated them. So they weren't exposed to the constant flow of information and technology, all the progress that was made in the old world that, by the way, was not invented in Europe. It was not invented by Europe. Europe just took these inventions and made them better. And they did so in a short period of time. And then, of course, Europe used these technologies, mostly the weapons, and they were constantly fighting against each other, constantly, over and over again. And when you're fighting against somebody and you're trying to one-up them, you're one-up them slightly. You know, one country utilizes a new weapon that defeats the other country. Then the other country responds by utilizing that same weapon and making it slightly better, and then they one-up the other one. They're constantly one-upping each other to the point of where once they finally interact with a nation or a land inhabited by which is that has never been exposed to this technology, they are significantly more advanced in weaponry. That's what happened. That's what happened with sub-Saharan Africa. And you could ask, well, why didn't they indigenously create these things? For the same reason Europe didn't. Because it's easier just to take something that somebody else invented and just make it better. We do it all the time. That's how we improve our technology. It's an incremental process. It's easier to improve upon somebody else's invention than to invent a brand new thing. And that's basically it. Now, I know that the racists like to point out the fact that the bell curve, you know, the bell curve just keeps getting, you know, it keeps coming up. It is true that people who self-identify as black typically have lower IQ and lower academic scores and things like that than whites. People who self-identify as whites. Now the question is this because of genetic reasons? Well, we already established the fact that sub-Saharan Africa has tremendous genetic variability. So to get a meaningful response to this is nearly impossible. I mean, think about it. If the chimpanzee is more closely related to human beings than a zebra is related to a horse, what exactly is the difference between a white man and a black man, and a black man and a black man? There's genetic variability there, but to what degree can it be measured? There's no precise definition for what is a black person or a white person. There's no scientific definition for it. So it's difficult to test these things. But here is just to put an end to all the bullshit, here's my unofficial test that tries to get as close to science as possible. And this is by no means the best test out there. This is the best thing I could think of. And it throws ethics out the window. Because in order to do a test like this, you have to do that. But if let's just say we're not bound by ethical considerations, here's a test. Okay. You take a group of newborns, a sample size of newborns. I don't know the sample size, but a group of newborn children who come from parents who identify, they have to self-identify as black. There's no definition. We can't say 95% black or originate from Africa because that doesn't mean anything. Self-identity is really the only thing to go by. So you take a sample of newborns, and then you take another sample of newborns born from parents who self-identify as white. And then you have to take those children away from their parents. Now, for the black newborns, you have to bleach their skin for half of the population. Okay, take the black newborns. Then for half of that sample, you have to bleach their skin. Okay. Now, for half of the intact black newborns, meaning they still have the melanin in their skin, you put them in poor, you give them up for adoption to adoptive parents that live in poor neighborhoods. Then for the intact black newborns, you give them to adoptive parents that live in upper class society, that are rich and are well off. And then you do the same thing for the bleached newborn black children. And then you do the same thing for the white children, the white newborns. For half of the white newborns, you have to somehow darken their skin permanently. I don't think we can do this yet. I don't know of any methods to rebuild the melanin in skin cells. There's a way to destroy them. You can bleach the skin cells and make your skin white, but I don't know of any method to make skin darker. So this would have to this experiment would require that kind of technology. You would have to darken half of those newborns with melanin so that their skin becomes as dark as a black child's would be. Okay, and then you take half of the intact white children and give them to adoptive parents that live in poverty, and then half of the intact white children go to upper class parents that are well off, that are rich, and then you do the same thing for the colored white children, and then you see what happens. You let them grow, and then they have to take IQ tests, and then you measure their academic performance, and then you compare them, and then you see what you get, and then you have to look at the different time intervals. You know, what's their IQ and academic performance when they're in first grade, maybe, and then what's their academic performance when they're in fourth grade, etc., etc. Just, it's something that would have to be conducted over the course of an entire lifetime, really. And then from there you can get some good data, and then you can draw conclusions. You compare the bleached children, the bleached black children, with the intact whites. Because if it is in fact genetic, they should perform worse consistently, even though they are bleached, and even if they are in upper class, raised by upper class parents. They should perform worse if it is in fact genetic. If they don't, then we know that this is due to social reasons, based on racism and things like that. And that's how you would do it. It's unethical, I know that. Bleaching children, taking them away from their parents. But this is how you would do it. This is the best experiment that I can think of. Anyway, this is Enigma Hood signing off.